want for Christmas?
See, we have a small problem. They've reopened the X-Files.
What happened to my car?
What? They're fixing it up.
No. I went to the garage. There's nothing there. Your guys aren't there, and my car is not there.
Hey, this is not me. I did not do this to you. I'm your friend, Bucky.
Well, be my friend and get my fucking car back, or I'll have to carry you out of here inside that fucking hat.
This guy could be trouble. Keep him busy. You have a drink? Let me have my gun.
Ralph, you can't see anything from up there. Bring her down a couple hundred feet. You read me? Ralph, come in. Do you read me?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Full Empire Promotions live event.
I'm Dominic. I'll be your host for this special Q&A with William Katt. We're live on Facebook and YouTube, so thanks so much to everyone who's watching us live. If you have any questions or would like to leave any comments for Bill, please feel free to do so, and we'll get to those during the broadcast. If you'd like your own private conversation with William after the show, he'll be doing one-on-one video meet and greets on Zoom. You can have 5 minutes to chat with Bill about whatever you'd like, and we'll even send you a recording of your meeting. In addition, you can get personally signed photographs as well as video greetings from Bill at fullempirepromotions.com. Without further delay, I'd like to welcome our special guest. He has nearly 150 credits on screen. You probably know him best as the iconic superhero Ralph Hinckley on The Greatest American Hero. He also played Tommy Ross, the doomed prom date in Carrie, and Roger Cobb in the cult horror film House. Other credits include Perry Mason, Big Wednesday, Baby, Secret of the Lost Legend, First Love, and The Man from Earth. Recent credits include films such as The Unwanted, Sparks, and The Second, as well as TV appearances on Supergirl and The Thundermans. I'm excited and honored to welcome my friend, client, a treasured person on screen and off, Bill Katt. Bill, how are you?
I don't know how I'll ever live up to that, Dominic.
Well, you already have.
Yeah.
You already
And
have.
I tell you, you were showing those credits a minute ago. That was some big hair. Big hair.
Well, big personality, so
Yeah.
you know, and he's still great hair now.
Yeah.
You know, so how have you been? Have you been holding up?
Yeah, I've been well. You know, I'm anxious for them to find some sort of solution to the pandemic, so I can get out there and shake hands and hug people and greet people in person at the cons. I'm anxious for them to come back. It was one of my favorite things to do in these last 7, 8, 9 years was to go out to the cons and meet all the fans that I enjoy so much, that have been so wonderful to me.
Yeah. Well, you definitely go above and beyond, give them an experience. I've seen it many times. So, but you are, Bill. You're one of the most positive people that I know, and being around you, you know, it just resonates joy and positivity. So, how have you been staying positive and trying to stay productive during such an odd year?
I play my piano and my guitars pretty regularly every day, and do yard work, and I've helped. You know, I have a lot of young people that I've kind of mentored that are in the film industry, and I really enjoy doing that. And that's been keeping me busy. You know, and I have 4 kids, so
right.
There's challenges to meet with all of those things.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that's how I've been staying busy, but time has flown. It's, you know, we went down. Last time I saw you was the last at a con back east, and I got home on March 2nd, March 3rd, and that week we were locked down, and we've been locked down ever since. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy because when the pandemic happened, you know, we had all this free time, and it's like, God, this year's going to drag. But like you said, it's still, you know, we're already in November, so it still flew by.
Yeah.
So. But I understand you were born in L.A. And both of your parents were actors.
Yes, they were.
Do you remember being on film sets as a child?
Oh gosh, yeah. One of my first memories that I have is from underneath a horse, watching my father, who was starring in Kit Carson with Don Diamond back in the 50s, and I remember watching him shoot and ride up on their horses and whatnot. And from that point on, I mean, it was always such a great pleasure for me to get on a set, mainly just to get out of school and then go to the set. And I always knew there'd be a cup of hot chocolate, and I'd get to eat some donuts. And I loved hanging out with the adults and climbing on the old Mitchell cameras and doing the wheels, making circle eights with the wheels on the old cameras, and climbing up on the cranes, the old Chapman cranes and whatnot. It was a great time for me. I really had wonderful memories, you know?
Yeah. Did you have any influence on screen that you watched in films growing up that pursued you to step into acting?
Or
was it just because it was in the family?
let's see, the Fly was the Boris. Was that Boris Karloff? No, that was
Vincent Price.
Vincent Price.
Yeah.
The Fly was my first horror film that I saw. Scared the living bejesus out of me. I remember I had to run to the lobby and I threw up in a bag. 'Cause I was so afraid. Some of my early favorite films were, Steve McQueen was always a big hero of mine, and Jimmy Stewart was always I love the John Ford westerns, and John Wayne, The Searchers was a great favorite of mine. I liked Lawrence of Arabia was one of my favorite films. Just some of the David Lean films, just those had a big influence on me. But why I became an actor, honest to God, I was in high school, really. I did a few things as a child. When I was 11, 12, I did a couple Perry Masons where I was the kid that came onto set and I pointed at something that the guys ran that way. And I did a scene on Rawhide that my father was guest starred on. And I had a scene with Clint Eastwood that was pretty neat, hanging off the side of a corral. And him and I had a scene together, but I really didn't get involved with and think about becoming an actor until I was in college. And I remember being 18, and really it was just following this pretty girl to the auditorium. I was going to hit on this girl, and she walked in, and there was an advanced acting class taking place. And as it turns out, I knew the teacher was friendly with my parents for many years prior to that, a wonderful gentleman named Jack Holland. And he asked if I wanted to join the class. And so I made up 10 weeks of work in the class. And that kind of started the whole thing. Then I went to, South Coast Repertory was in its third stage down in Orange County. And I joined that repertory company. And that's kind of how it all started for me. I really loved the stage most of my life. When I wasn't doing film or television, I was always here at the Mark Taper Forum or CTG or Dorothy Chandler. I was up at the Current Theater in San Francisco. I did all kinds of Lort theaters, the Cincinnati, I was there, and in Ohio and New York, the Phoenix Rep. I love doing stage work. Most famously, probably that people remembering for is Pippin.
Right.
So when I was blessed to be able to do that with Mr. Fosse and some of the wonderful cast.
Right. Having done so much theater and so much film, which one do you prefer, and which one would you say is more gratifying?
I really prefer the stage. I've always preferred the stage, although I think now at my age, I'm a man of a certain age. I don't, like John Gielgud said before he passed many, many years ago, it's just I don't have the stamina to do it. And I don't know if my memory would serve me to memorize 100 pages of dialogue now. I don't know that I could do it. Whereas doing film or television, it's kind of incremental. I have no problem memorizing 7 to 10 pages of dialogue, but it's very hard for me to commit to learning and memorizing 100 pages and having the stamina to be on stage for 2.5 hours. That's
right.
difficult. Although I miss it terribly.
Yeah, and I guess it's tough because you do repeat performances on stage, and you can have a great night and say, "Man, I really nailed it." Well, now I got to do it again 100 times.
Yeah.
So I guess could be more pressure on stage as well.
Yeah.
Glenn's asking, what about a musical? Are you a fan of musicals?
I love musicals. It's funny because I did a few of them that I really enjoyed. Of course, Pippin, most famously. I got to tour with the late, great George Rose. I took over for a national tour of Pirates of Penzance. I love doing that. I've done 2 productions of Music Man at different summer stock at the Cherry Playhouse in Michigan, and Kansas City. I did Smoke on the Mountain, which was one of my favorite plays, playing an old Baptist preacher. And that was in Kansas City. I ran for 6 months there. I had marvelous time. And the weirdest thing is that I've been listening to the Broadway channel on Sirius Radio a lot lately, and really, really missing doing musicals. I love
Right.
singing, and I love just the camaraderie that you have on stage, and the rehearsal period, that month or 6 weeks of rehearsal, and then the out of town trial. You really, really get to be close to the family that's in the theater. I miss that terribly.
Right. Right. Do you remember ever having stage fright? And if so, what got you over it?
Oh yeah, I think I've always had stage fright, before I go out on stage. In the last 7, 8 years, I've been playing with a jazz trio. I play pretty much weekly, although we've disbanded now because of COVID.
Right.
No matter the venue we played, I always have stage fright, whether it was in the theater or now. I remember one time in particular. I was off stage with the wonderful Diane Wiest. We were at the Phoenix Rep many years ago in New York off Broadway. And I remember being so afraid that I threw up in a bucket, wiped my mouth off quickly, and ran out on stage.
What is it with you and buckets? You throw up in them, you get hit in the head with them?
I know, I'm kind of famous for it,
Yeah. You never made your bucket list. Well, one of your earliest credits was a TV film in 1971 called The Trackers, where you acted alongside Sammy Davis Jr., Ernest Borgnine,
yeah.
and many others. Did you get to spend much time around such icons?
Around who?
Around Sammy Davis Jr. or Ernest Borgnine?
I only got to spend one day with Sammy. He was at the top of his game at that point.
Yeah.
It was funny to see him playing this Western bounty hunter. The story goes quickly for our audience out there that the story was they kidnap my older sister, and I get killed in the beginning trying to save her or whatnot. And then Sammy Davis rides up. Ernest Borgnine is holding me. Poor man had to carry me, all 170 pounds of me. He was. I think they propped me up on something for him to carry me. And but I worked with Sammy for one day, Sammy and Ernest Borgnine one day, and it was just amazing. I got this wonderful leather-bound, encrypted script holder from Sammy Davis Jr. And I treasured that. I kept it for many, many years.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, just having one day with him is more than people dream about. So that's.
And at the time, I was never really a fan of his, but when I started listening to my musical likings are Broadway to symphonic to choral music, and I listened to jazz, and I listened to hip hop, and I listened to country. And one of the things I listen to is Sinatra on Sirius Radio, and they play Sammy Davis a lot on there. And I had no idea what a wonderful singer he was, and what a wonderful talent he was.
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, I think Sammy Davis is like whiskey. The older you get, the more you appreciate him.
Yeah, and the only song I ever recalled of his was Candyman.
Yeah.
Growing up, that was so popular, but he had so many wonderful, wonderful songs.
Yeah, well,
from the 40s, and
Yeah, what a great way to start off. Acting in a TV film with Sammy Davis Jr.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, your first big role came in 1976 with the role of Tommy Ross in Brian De Palma's classic.
Actually, my career really took off with a show with Angie Dickinson called Policewoman. That's where I got my biggest break. I was on the pilot episode, and I played the bad guy, and I got to hold Angie Dickinson when she was at her very hottest. I got to be in an elevator with her for 3 days and hold her it was fantastic. But it started my career on that kind of trajectory because I was in the credits of that TV series for the whole first year. It was me appearing in the opening credits with Angie Dickinson. Launched my career, and then I went on to do Carrie was my real big break.
Yeah. I mean, that was an iconic. You were part of the most iconic scene in in horror history. Do you remember how you first became attached with Carrie, and what your first impression of De Palma was?
Wow. I was living with two other guys in Sherman Oaks in a white ghetto neighborhood. I mean, we were living in this house that was kind of a ramshackle house, kind of broken down. Three guys living in there. I was kind of making my living jumping between singing at little clubs at night. Coincidentally enough, I started Al Jarreau and we played at the same club, although we were on different nights. And that was before Al Jarreau became the heralded musician that he was.
Right.
But I was jumping between that and doing theater and living on unemployment, and then auditioning for Carrie and Star Wars at the same time.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
George Lucas and Brian De Palma, who were very friendly with each other. There was like a little clique of directors that were all very close to one another. I think him and Spielberg and John Milius in that group. Anyway, they were all very friendly with one another, and to save time and kind of condense their workload, the casting agent arranged for auditions for Star Wars and Carrie at the same time. And so I went in and I met both of them the first time, and then auditioned for each of them separately. And then eventually, when I was passed over for Star Wars, I did that on-screen test with Kurt Russell, and he really blew it for me. You know, I had a real shot, but Kurt Russell blew it for me. I'm just kidding.
Well, he paid for it. I mean, he had no career after that.
Yeah, he had no career.
You know, nothing.
I'm so sorry for him. You know. But after that, I got to test, and then I did a screen test for with Sissy and Amy Irving, and I got to do that. We went through a long rehearsal process at Brian's apartment, where he had this little reel-to-reel tape machine, and he would, as we rehearsed and kind of improvised over the dialogue that was written, he would make changes and bring us the script in the next time. And that's how we worked for like a full 2 weeks. And then, of course, he worked with Sissy and John Travolta and Nancy, and we worked all similarly. I remember the first time I met John Travolta, I was walking out of Brian's apartment. He was living over on Fountain in Hollywood, and or West Hollywood, and right off off Crescent Heights in Fountain. And I met John right there, the loveliest guy. He was just coming off, I think, his first season with Welcome Back, Kotter.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just a joy to work with. Although when we shot the film, I really only worked with him for 2 weeks when we shot the gymnasium when we were at the prom, because otherwise I was just working with Amy, and then I worked with Sissy.
Right.
Those are the days that I was working, and John was working with Nancy on separate days.
Yeah. Well, De Palma had already made such great films prior to Carrie, like Sisters and Phantom of the Paradise. Had you been aware of his work?
Oh yeah. Let me scratch my back. When I knew I got the film, I really didn't know who he was. So I went out and I looked. You know, it was kind of a big deal. People were telling me, "Oh, this is a big deal. He's really getting ready to break out." He was, and I went and I saw his films with Bobby De Niro. Who knew Bobby De Niro? You know, before The Godfather. I mean, with Brian, he was doing comedy.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing kind of dark comedy. It's funny now. It's kind of come full circle that he's doing comedy as he got older. You know, it's really nice to see because he's really gifted.
Yeah.
But I watched all of Brian's films leading up to that. It's strange that Phantom of Paradise hasn't been remade. It was a wonderful film, really interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't either. You know, it's might just be too different.
They've remade Carrie 2 or 3 times, you know?
Yeah. Well, they haven't remade Rocky Horror either. So maybe it's a musical thing where it's a product of its time and they don't want to, you know, who knows.
I don't know who you'd get to step up to Tim Curry's performance in that.
Yeah.
So extraordinary.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I got to see Tim Curry perform that live when he was when it was on stage.
Wow.
Yeah.
It had to be. Well, before
he came out there in the audience, I think it was at the Whiskey or was it the Rainbow? I can't remember. It was on Sunset Boulevard, and he came out shaking his fanny, and he was all done up, and he would shake his hair, and the glitter would fly everywhere. Oh, he was just marvelous.
I'm sure he was eating it up.
Yeah.
Well, had you?
Where was I doing? I did a short-lived 4-episode of a series called Good Sports with Ryan O'Neal and Farrah Fawcett. And I remember seeing Tim Curry. This was many years ago, of course, but I remember seeing and talking to Tim Curry and telling him how much I loved his performance. And he was so gracious. What a wonderful guy. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to mention Stephen King, of course. He wrote the novel for Carrie. Was he on set much? Do you remember meeting him on set or seeing him around?
No. PJ Souls, who was famous, she wore the red baseball cap, the ball cap in Carrie. She said that Stephen came one day. She remembers seeing him or meeting him, and then that was it. I don't know if Brian wanted him to be there. I never even heard if Stephen King liked the film or not. I don't know.
Interesting.
He's had so many of his books and short stories turned into feature films, and miniseries,
Yeah, and he was hot back, still is, but I mean, back in the 70s, he was pumping them out.
Yeah.
So who knows? Well, Carrie, in addition to yourself, packed a great cast, as we mentioned, Sissy Spacek and John Travolta and Betty Buckley and Nancy Allen, and veteran actress Piper Laurie, who I understand sort of became a mentor for you.
Oh, she was fabulous. She actually thought, the story goes, and this is what she told me. I've heard her say it. She thought that Carrie was a comedy initially. Isn't that bizarre?
That is.
She thought it was a comedy, like it was going to be a send up. But wow, she was nominated for that.
She should have been. She was,
along with Sissy.
Yeah. So what do you remember Piper mentoring you with? Like, you kept in touch with her obviously after that, but did she read lines for you? Did she help you with auditions? How did she mentor you?
Oh, well, acting wise, you just pick up things being on set with them,
right.
And watching someone really, really good work. You go, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. You pretend like you're not pretending. I learned in that, as I learned from other wonderful actors that I've worked with. I always like to work with actors and that are better than me, because that's when you really learn. And she was so wise about her choices as an actor. But when I really got to know Piper was we were both on the board of directors at Screen Actors Guild for about 3 years. And that's when I really got to know her. And what a interesting, she was a very interesting person, very knowledgeable about the film industry. And that's how that went in my relationship. And then, on the con circuit over the last 7-8 years, I've met her several times with you, in fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, she's amazing. I mean, she has great longevity and just, by all means, a definition of a veteran.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm asking, why do you think Carrie stands the test of time so well? What is it about Carrie that you think people just keep watching it?
Well, I think it was kind of allegorical in its format. It was like the story of the ugly duckling that falls in love, and then she gets fucked by all these people. It's kind of like, I don't know. I think it's so apropos to today.
It is.
It still rings true. There's just so many vile, ugly, nasty people that don't want to see you have any success at all. You know, it's not good enough for them to be successful. They have to make sure that other people are not successful or happy. You know, I don't know. I find it very true, as true today as it was then.
I agree. I
The
agree.
performances were all, they were all, it was a marvelous cast. It was kind of like lightning in a bottle. You know, the cast just, for some inexplicable reason, the cast just worked together. It's like Hitchcock used to say. He said, if you get the casting right, that's 80% of the movie or more. It's lightning in a bottle. And the same thing held true when I did Greatest American Hero. I mean, when Connie Selica and Bob Culp and me, when we all gotten into a room, and back in 2008, actually, we did something at the San Diego Comic-Con. We got together when we were launching our comic book.
Mhm.
We got together. And I remember Connie saying, when we were going into the convention room, she said, Bill, what if no one's there? And I said, I think they will be. And we got to walk into the room, and there was like 2,000 or 3,000 people in the conference room. It was so wonderful. But let me digress for a second. It was lightning in a bottle when Connie and Bob and I got together. It was that same chemistry that you saw on Greatest American Hero.
Right. Within.
Marvelous, marvelous.
Yeah. Jessica is watching along from New Zealand, I believe.
Oh wow.
Carrie's one of her best horror films of all time. What did you think of the remake?
I liked the remake. It was different. I think there was like, you know, I'm not a fan too much of the CGI, today's CGI. I kind of like old school, and I think people get too the filmmakers get too enamored of CGI, and it detracted from the story. And it's a love story. It was a love story between Tommy and Sissy and her relationship with her batshit crazy mother. I mean, Julianne Moore is a wonderful actress, and Chloe Moretz is a marvelous actress. You know, I love both of those actors. It was just a different kind of movie.
Yeah.
You know? I think sometimes it's best to leave well enough alone. You know,
Agreed.
You don't want to try and redo The Godfather, for God's sakes. You know,
No, or Jaws, please don't redo Jaws. Well, I have to mention a film of yours that's one of my favorites. A film called First Love. A cast that included Susan Day and Robert Loggia and the late great John Hurd.
Yeah.
What are your memories with John Hurd on that film? I was lucky enough, as you know, to work with him and get to know him, and he was just a hilarious character.
Oh, just a lovely, lovely guy. And I went many years without seeing him again until he became a client of yours. Worked with you for a long time, and just how marvelous. My favorite memory working with John was was not on the set. We were off the set one night, and we had been drinking a little bit, like, and I remember being plastered in the hotel, and John lost a contact lens, and we were down on our hands and knees crawling around the floor looking for his contact lens. That's my favorite memory of John.
Yeah, he had that such a unique blend of like humor and wit and dryness that I haven't really seen matched. You know,
Yeah.
he was just fun. You know, fun guy to be around.
Roy, you know, and when you saw, I'm so happy for him that he did so well in his career, and the Home Alone that he did was just so iconic.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll always remember him for that.
Yeah, and so the material on First Love, was it controversial at the time? Like when it came out, was there any kind of backlash from studios, or do you remember the reaction?
I remember the most talked about thing about that film, because I had turned it down 2 or 3 times. That was the first film I did after Carrie, and I really didn't want to do kind of a rom-com, but it had a dark edge to it, and people were I lost track of my thought. There was a darkness to that film. And once we did it, it was at Paramount Studios. I remember Michael Eisner was the head of the studio at that point. And Joan Darling, who directed the film, Joan Darling was thought of as one of the premier acting coaches in Los Angeles at the time. I mean, if you got into her class, you were blessed. Her scene study class, you were blessed. She was marvelous. And I think that was her first film. And I might be mistaken on that. I don't know. I have to fact check that.
I know she did a lot of TV.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. There you go. A lot of TV. We did the film. She did her cut, which she was promised, and then she went away. I remember, to Hawaii. And while she was in Hawaii, I believe it was Mike Eisner, or I might be not remembering it correctly. Anyway, the studio Paramount took the darkness out of the film because there was a date rape in a dollhouse on that film.
Oh, okay.
I raped Susan Day. And she was like all about, no. I know that there was some very sexy scenes in that film, but there was one scene where she wasn't having it at all. And I went ahead and I forced myself on her. And it was a really good, hardcore scene, really interesting. And they cut it. And Joan Darling was very, very upset about that. That's what I most remember about that film. Other than Susan, working with Susan Day, I'm like, my God, who wouldn't want to work with that girl, the Partridge Family? She was so beautiful and you know, someone that I had watched on TV lustfully for a long time. You know?
Yeah, well, you had a lot of intimate scenes with her. Did you guys spend much time off scene?
It was all professional. It's hard to get too excited when there's 50 guys standing around and go, move your head a little bit, Bill, move your head. Okay, back up. Let some light on her face. Okay, now kiss her. Okay, now back up. The camera's coming in. I mean, that's what goes on in those scenes.
Yeah.
It's very disconcerting. You are not alone. There's 50 people standing all around you.
Yeah, that's the magic of the filmmaking, right?
Yep.
What we see on screen is definitely not what's happening.
No.
Did you spend much time off screen and off set with Susan, like to kind of get comfortable working with her?
No, not really. I mean, we would have a glass of wine or something at the hotel at night or whatnot, or we had a couple times we had dinner together. But no, we were just good friends, and I think she was newly married at the time.
Right.
She had married the agent, I think, where she was working. They were married for a long time. I'm not certain if they're married now. Right. I really don't know what's become of Susan Day. She had a great run, and of course, working on LA Law all those years, you know, with my good friend Corbin Burnson, you know, and that wonderful cast.
Yeah. Well, I have to say,
Bochco series, wasn't it? Steve Bochco.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I have to say, you know, I love First Love, even though, you know, I agree with you. It did have a dark edge, and I love the ending. You know, I love that your character kind of got his revenge and sent her off on a train, and it ends with him, you know, bullshitting with a camel.
Yeah.
You know?
one of the fans down here, Sally, was just saying that how much she loved that film. You know.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, anybody's watching, you can check it out on Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
on there.
And Joan did a very good job with that film.
Yes. Well, of course, I'd have to mention the film you did with John Milius called Big Wednesday. You had mentioned sort of Milius being in that Spielberg De Palma camp. Mm-hmm. Did you audition for Big Wednesday right after Carrie, or through the connection there?
After First Love. You know, I was coming off of the way it goes in Hollywood is you want to make, you know, my friend Gary Busey would say, you want to make sure you have your next job before the job you're working in finishes.
Right.
You never know if the film's going to come out and tank. So you want to make sure you have your next job. So I was lucky enough right after First Love, after we wrapped, I was lucky enough to be touted for the John Milius film. At the time, you know, Big Wednesday was going to be this epic surfing movie, you know, and I believe the story goes that John Milius, it was going to be a big film. I think it was $8.5 million at Warner Brothers, which at the time, that was a pretty good budget.
Yeah.
And it was at the same time that Spielberg and John Milius and George Lucas, they all swapped points in each other's film.
Wow.
And Big Wednesday, when it came out, just fucking, the critics hated it and it tanked. But in the ensuing 25 or 30 years after that, it did very, very well, and it really became a cult classic and made its money back plus some with the DVD releases and all the VOD downloads, etc. So I think John redeemed himself with that over the course of time. But when it first was released, it was just horribly, badly received. You know,
Yeah.
wonderful for me to do it because I had grown up, surfing was a part of my life, you know, from the time I was 10, 11 years old. I mean, I was in the water 3 or 4 days a week surfing. And I got to meet Jan Michael Vincent and Gary Busey. The first time I met John, actually, I went to the lot at Warner Brothers, and I sat on the sofa between Gary Busey on one side and Jan on the other, and we just sat and talked for an hour, maybe longer, maybe 2 hours. We sat and we talked, and Milius said, the chemistry works, you know, and
Yeah.
And it was terrific. It really was a lot of fun. Really,
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
I think in a way it was a little ahead of its time.
Yeah.
You know,
Could
for what it
And,
was.
you know, the thing is, it was never really a film, a surfing film. It was really a film about friendship. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Renee. It was a film about friendship, and it was about a little ribbon of life on the West Coast in the 60s. That's what it was.
Yep.
And I grew up in that, a little bit beyond that era. That was just before my time, but I knew all those guys that it was talking about, you know, and I hung out at Malibu when I was a little guy, you know.
So there was a lot of you in that role.
A lot of that in me. I remember my dad, when I was growing up, he said, "You can't eat your surfboard." And when I got that film, I remember grinning ear to ear and saying, "Dad, I'm making a living with my surfboard," you know. And we got
Right.
to, you know, it was all pretty girls and surfing for like 8 months. You know, we surfed here to all over the West Coast, up at the West Coast. We went down to El Salvador and we surfed out La Libertad and Sunsol. And then when the film wrapped, we got to go to Hawaii and surf the big surf over on the North Shore. And that was just so much fun. Actually, it was right after that. We were shooting on the North Shore, staying at Turtle Bay in the wonderful hotel out there on Oahu. And we were surfing, and Gary got Buddy Holly. And he went right from there, and he went to do Buddy Holly. And he just freaking blew up, you know?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Was this the first time on screen you got to work with your mom, Barbara Hale?
Yes.
What was that experience like when you found out?
No, when I was a little kid, I worked a couple days on Perry Mason. But when I really worked with her, I got to work with her. She came in to meet John Milius to audition for the part. And I remember she said to him, she said, "Well, John, you can't say that I don't fit the part." She was my mom. And she had that wonderful scene in Big Wednesday where she's talking with Jan Michael Vincent, and he said, "You know, I've done a lot of crazy things, Miss Barlow, but I never pissed in your steam iron." That was great. I love that scene.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And she did 2 episodes of Greatest American Hero later on from that, and then after that, I worked with her for 4.5 years on the Perry Mason specials with Raymond Burr.
Yeah, that's great. Pretty cool. Sally's watching along. Says loved you in the movie with Ann Baxter.
Yeah, thanks, Sally, so much. That was actually the very first thing I did in film and television with Ann Baxter, and it was a religious film. You know, I never really got a wide release, and I didn't know who Ann Baxter was. It wasn't until much later that I really saw that she was a pretty big deal in her time. She was a big star.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, we have to mention the role that you're most known for among your fans, and that's Ralph Hinckley from the TV series The Greatest American Hero.
Yep.
Do you remember how you were approached for this role, and what did you think when you first read the script for the pilot?
Well, I wasn't looking to do television for sure. I was very content doing a film occasionally and doing theater a couple times a year. You know, that was when I was doing. I was working for. I worked for Gordon Hunt a number of times, who was the head of casting. Oh, thank you, Mary. Gordon Hunt was who was famously Helen Hunt's, the wonderful actress Helen Hunt. Her father, who went on to become a really sought-after director. He was the casting director of the Mark Taper, and I did 4 or 5 plays with him during that time in my early 20s. Point being, what am I trying? I just got sponge brain.
So Steve Cannell approached you.
Oh yeah, I was back east. I was doing theater at that time. I had just gotten, and I was concluding Bonjour off Broadway at the Phoenix Rep. I think I mentioned it a minute ago. With Diana Wiest, one of the great actresses. For people out there who don't know the name, she was in Edward Scissorhands and The Mom and that, and she's done so many.
Lost Boys.
Yeah, just marvelous actress. What I most remember from that play, doing that off Broadway, is that Meryl Streep at the time, she was very good friends with, and Meryl Streep came back and gave me a kiss on the cheek after the performance. I never forget that. But this is just as Deer Hunter was coming out. That's how long ago it was.
Wow.
Steve Cannell sent me a script. My agent sent it to me. I read it. It was laugh out loud funny, but I was not interested in putting on a funny red suit, you know, and being a cartoon. You got to remember, at the time, that was death to an actor. It was death.
Complete opposite now.
Complete opposite. I mean, everybody now, the Robert Downeys and the Ed Nortons and all those people, the Hemsworths, and all that, everybody wants that big superhero franchise because, you know, because it's so much money, and they can go on and do things now. It's forgiving, you know. But at the time, you know, the late great Adam West would have said the same thing. You know, what saved him? Well, you know, he went on to be such a wonderful voice actor, you know, and had such a long career there. But for me, it was death, and I wasn't interested in doing it. But I did say, okay, well, I'll meet the guy, because I had a very young son at the time, was only a few months old and newly married. I'm back east doing theater. I'm only making like $400 a week, supporting an apartment in New York and a home in Los Angeles and a little kid. So I was going, well, okay. I read the script. Steve flew out to New York. He saw a matinee performance on a Sunday afternoon. He took me out to dinner. And I found him to be so gracious and cordial and fun and so enthusiastic about the script and about life. I had no idea what a big deal it was that he was at the top of his game in television. He was one of the biggest, outside of Aaron Spelling, he was one of the biggest independent producers in the business. You know, he went on to do, like, I think he had like 43 TV series.
Yeah, he was a powerhouse.
Ridiculous. You know, and then after he's finished that career, he went on to sell, he had 10 best-selling novels, by the way. You know?
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
So anyway, he came back, took me to dinner. He never wanted to talk about, he said, I asked him, well, what about this suit that I have to wear? And he said, well, don't worry about that. We're going to work that out, Bill. Let's not worry about that. And I said, okay, well, I'll do it. So I finished about 3-4 weeks later, I finished doing the play. My hair was brown at the time. I went to the set. I flew home that night. The next day I had to be on set. They immediately dyed my hair back to its natural blonde color, which it was in the show. curly blonde. And I got to meet Alex Beaton and all the other, Steven. He walked me around the studio. It was at Paramount at the time. Walked me around and met all the major players. And then finally I got to see the suit. And I was like mortified, just mortified. When you see that scene, when I first in the pilot, when I look at myself in the full length mirror, and I go, "Hey, sailor," that was improv, and they kept it in. So much of that was Stephen Cannell's. He had the great. He just knew to keep a lot of that a little loose. Always, we were always all about the script, but he gave us breath. So Bob Culp, Robert Culp, and I, and Connie, we all had a little bit of an improv in just about everything that we did, and he kept it in. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
by the way, my agent said, "Oh, Bill, don't worry about it. You'll get to go back and do theater. It's gonna air. You might do 3 or 4 shows, and then they'll be off the air." Right?
3 years later.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, the theme song for the show by Joey Scarberry was number 2 actually on the Billboard chart during the summer of '81. How integral do you feel the theme was to the success of the series?
Oh, I often have said over the years, I don't know which was more famous, the series or the song. One lended itself to the other.
Yeah.
I know Mike Post, who wrote that song. He had a lot of success with some other songs, but I think that was really his biggest pop song.
Yeah, for sure.
On air. I still hear it.
You still hear it. Car commercials. I mean, they still use it for everything. Yep. Renee's asking, how was it to work with Robert Culp?
I'll tell you, Renee, when we first started working together, there was a little bit of tension there, because it wasn't Greatest American Hero starring Robert Culp and William Katt. It was Greatest American Hero starring William Katt and Robert Culp. And Bob had a lot of success as an actor. He had several series of his own. He had famously done I Spy with his co-star, who won an Emmy, by the way, of a script that Bob Culp wrote. Who am I thinking of it? Cosby. Yes, Cosby. He won a. I don't want to give him too much credit right now, in light of the fact of what he's done in his life, personally. But Bob was a little bit miffed at that, and you can see it because we shot the pilot kind of consecutively, like the script. So we shot all those early scenes when I first meet the guy from the FBI. Oh, thank you, Mary. I remember meeting him, and there was that tension in the first thing when that whole scene in the bathroom of the high school, when he comes to the high school and he's telling me how it's going to be, and I tell him, no, that's not how it's going to be. That's how you think it's going to be. There was real tension there. That was 2 actors that really didn't like each other very much, but they knew we had to work together for a long time. And for the first 2 weeks, we did not get along very well at all. And finally, I went to his trailer at some point. I can't remember exactly when. And I knocked on his door, and I asked him if we could talk. And we arrived at a formal détente, an ability to work together. And then slowly over those 3 years, we grew closer and closer and closer. And I really learned to like Bob an awful lot professionally. And then we became great friends after the show. We became very good friends and stayed friends right up until the time I saw him just weeks before he passed away.
Yeah.
I must say, Bob, right after the show, he got sober. He was still drinking in the show, and I was imbibing on. I was not a saint on that show either. But after that, he got sober, and he was a much better person as a result of that.
Right. Do you remember how they filmed the scenes where you're flying? Was it mostly stunt double, or was it just all green screen?
Yeah, most of that was, I'd hit a mini tramp. They put a mini tramp down, I'd hit it, and I'd fly up over camera, and then it would be my stunt double, the wonderful Dennis Danger. He would do all the main stunts, and he would do like it was called the cowboy switch. And so you'd see him flying, and he would crash into all kinds of stuff, and then I'd pop up in the foreground, and it looked like it was me having done it, but it was actually him. I did some of the helicopter stuff and hung on to helicopters, and I did all that stuff, and I did some of the stunts, but all the most of that stuff was Dennis Danger. He
Right.
did a marvelous job, and no one ever got hurt on the set. And we did a lot of work with helicopters, and that was right at that time. Some of our crew were injured in that helicopter crash out of Indian Dune. Remember what was the film? What was that film? I can't remember the film. I have sponge brain. Where the wonderful actor was killed.
Oh, the Twilight Zone film, Vic Morrow
Yeah.
was beheaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's shows a lot about competent stunt work.
Yeah.
Kathy's watching, and hey, Kathy, how are you? Speaking of stunts,
What was the first one? Oh God, I don't know. The first stunt, I can't remember. Probably in a TV show or something or other. When I did House, the film House, though, that stair fall that I do backwards down the stairs, that was me doing that stair fall. That was pretty neat. Butch and Sundance, the early days, we did some wild shit on that. We did a fight on top of a moving train. That was me doing that fight on top there. We jumped horses out of the train car. That was me. We did a lot of riding on that, but I grew up around horses, so
Right.
that was never a stretch for me. I did a great episode on TV with your old friend Wilford Brimley, where we did a ride down a very, very steep incline, scary as shit. And I really learned from Wilford because he was a great, for real cowboy. And he said,
Yeah.
"Come on, let's go." And you just watch me. And he took me down that hill. Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, there's nobody better to teach you how to ride a horse than
No,
Wilford Brimley.
He was a real cowboy.
It was his first job. He was the one of the apes in Planet of the Apes, the one that was on the horse.
Is that right?
First job, yeah.
Yeah. He was a character. I tell you what.
He
I'm
was.
so sorry that we lost him this last year.
Yeah,
I know
he was-
he was a friend of yours.
he was hysterical. He was just a treasure, But of course, before we go, I have to mention House because House is one of the big cult films from the '80s. Was this your first time meeting Steve Miner?
It was. And I'll tell you that the film of House, I have to give credit where credit is due, and the majority of that sense of humor in House. I mean, him and I just seemed to work well together. I found it a little bit irksome that we never got to work together again.
Yeah,
I must have liked him more than he liked me, was the way it went. But I really enjoyed him, and I just I always played off of him and his sensibilities in that character, and that out of left field kind of sense of humor that he had really lended itself to that film.
yeah. Well, I got the sense.
Marvelous film. I had no idea it was going to be as good as it was.
Yeah, it's a great one of the early horror comedies. And
That film hasn't been remade.
yeah, true. And I kind of got the impression that was kind of Steve Miner's launching pad to get away from horror and kind of move over to comedy and different genres. He'd done all horror films before House, and I think and I think he was probably trying to use House, the comedy part of House, to step out of the genre.
Yeah, he did some wonderful films after that, but I think most famously his stint with Wonder Years was what gave him the financial stability to go on and do other things.
Right.
He was with that show for a long time, I believe.
Yeah.
I talked to him not too long ago. I reached out to him on his email just because I was thinking about him, and he responded, and we had a nice chat, and that was nice.
That's awesome. Well, the major theme of House was mental illness due to the Vietnam War and PTSD. That's pretty much how your character relived that the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that real life monsters on set dealing with that material helped offset the humor of the film? Was kind of the balance there?
Probably. I can't say for certainty, but that seems like a fair analysis of that. I always play it as I've always played comedy as real. I play, out of my toolbox as an actor, one of the things I always seem to go back to all the time is when I'm doing comedy, I always play the truth in the comedy. I play a real guy in an absurd situation. So for me, working with those monsters and stuff, I just treated it as if I was in a real situation. And maybe what you're saying is true.
Yeah.
That's what made it work.
Yeah, that's kind of what I always got from House. What I thought made it so great was because the first thing you want to do after being afraid is or being worried is laugh,
Hmm.
and it was that perfect balance of the two.
Yeah. I mean, I love that scene. No, what was great. One of my favorite scenes in that movie was when I was burying
Yeah,
my ex-wife, the monster, and I'm burying her in the yard. And then that pretty girl comes up, and I'm trying to pick her up at the same time as I'm burying it, and I'm the hand is coming out on the bottom. And then what was the song that wonderful song?
it was "You're Too Good," I think, was it?
Oh my
Yeah,
God! And
yeah,
they used. Oh, I'm drawing a blank who the singer was. She was so marvelous. Big star.
yeah. I can't remember her name either. It
Oh my gosh.
was a
Big
black
star.
woman, right?
Maybe, huh?
It was a black woman, black singer.
Oh, no.
No,
She was white. She had a big hit with that song. Maybe one of the fans out there remember.
maybe I'm thinking of the original version of that song. I think it was that. I don't know if that was the original version. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, if anybody watching, let us know. You're Too Good. The song from House. Who originated it and who sung it for the film?
Ronstadt.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Right. We have a device right here that tells us that. Well, we are running out of time, but of course, I do have to mention one last film you did. You did Perry Mason many times, playing the role of Paul Drake Jr.,
Yep.
working alongside your mom, Barbara Hale, and as well as Raymond Burr. Any quick memories of being on Perry Mason?
Oh, it's just yeah. I mean, it was always marvelous. I mean, what a great gig to be able to do 4 movies a year, and they all took about a month to do, 5 weeks to do, um, and work with my mom. How great is that? I was very close to my mom. We were always very close. I mean, she was the matriarch of the family. She was the center of the wheel, and it was marvelous to spend time with her. I loved her. Even when she retired and she wasn't working anymore, any projects that I was doing, I would always work on scripts with her because she loved that process.
Yeah, I wish I'd gotten to meet her. She seemed like a fun person to be around.
I mean, she was kind of like a Betty White. That's as close an analogy as I can make. I mean, she had a mouth like a sailor. She was so loving and gracious and told the most marvelous stories. Oh, thank you, Renee. Yeah, told the most marvelous stories. She was a great raconteur. Her and my father, great raconteur, great storytellers. They knew how to start with a joke, end with a joke, and have a beginning and a middle and an end, and be poignant and she was just marvelous in that respect. I miss her dearly.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, recent credits you've done Jerome Bixby's and Richard Shankman's film "Man from Earth," as well as the sequel, and you've been keeping busy doing independent TV shows. And I understand you've got a Christmas movie coming out.
I did a film last year. It's called Hark. It's kind of a cute script. I didn't think I was going to do it. Was kind of a lower budget film, and I think it might even be a Lifetime movie, a Christmas movie. But it was a lot of fun. I got to play this wacky vet. I really enjoyed doing that. And I recently did a film with oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Oh, I'm drawing
John Bernthal, right? You did something with John Bernthal commercial, or
something with John Bernthal,
yeah,
which was a lot of fun. Bruce
Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern and I did a film together not too long ago. He was wonderful to work with. Now, talk about someone who is iconic, that goes back, who studied with Stella Adler, for God's sakes, marvelous actor to work with. Ryan Phillippe, I did a film with him in The Second. That was a lot of fun. I played a Southern gentleman, a senator from the South. Small role, but a lot of fun. And got a couple things coming up, but not too much to talk about. I mean, this was all before COVID, but
Yeah.
since last March, I mean, really, the film industry is just now ticking up. They're shooting a few films up in Montana. I think, Kevin Costner's thing, Yellowstone, is back in production up in Montana. They're doing a few things, but by and large, it's not full steam ahead yet.
No. Yeah, I know they're filming a lot in Vancouver as well, and Atlanta. Well, my final question for you, Bill, is one that I ask everybody that I talk to, and I'm going to put you on the spot, but I love hearing the answers. If you could pick one actor to star in a film with you and one director to make the film, who would you pick? Now, the two caveats, they have to be people you've never worked with before, and they have to be people who are still alive.
Wow. Ooh.
Yeah, everybody always gets stumped.
Wow. I don't know. There's so many actors I'd love to work with. I got to work with Tommy Lee Jones and Tuesday Weld once a long time ago. And James Cameron, that was one of my great things with John Frankenheimer when I did Rainmaker.
Well, that's what's hard about this question for you, because you worked with so many people.
Yeah.
You've
Oh, gee whiz. I don't know.
Are there any directors, like current directors, that you watch a lot of now? You'd say, man, I'd love to work with them.
I don't watch a lot of TV, to be honest. No one would probably have me,
No, they would. They would.
Would I like to work with? Of course, I'd like to work with Spielberg. I think he's just the master. I had the great pleasure of knowing him a little bit when he was with Amy Irving many, many years ago.
Right.
Lovely, lovely guy, and one of our great directors. I know you're a big fan of his.
Yes. Yeah.
Steve McQueen, I'd love to work with him. I was such a fan of 12 Years a Slave, and
you'd have to get a shovel and some reanimation serum and a shovel to do that.
Yeah, I would love to work with Julianne Moore. I think she's just one of my favorite actors.
There you go. So we're putting it out there in the universe.
Yeah.
William Katt, Julianne Moore, and a Steven Spielberg film.
Oh.
We'll put it out there in the universe and see what happens. Well, I'm just combing through here to see if there's any final questions. Johnny says, we need more Greatest American Hero. They tried that and crashing.
A couple years ago with a girl, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
They asked me to do a voiceover in it, and I said, nah, not going to do a voiceover. And one of your good friends, George Wendt, was even in that. He said it was kind of cute.
Yeah.
But I tried to make it a half-hour series, and I think, and it just didn't work,
Yeah, the crash and burned harder than Ralph ever did.
Yeah.
Their remake attempt. Well, Bill, it's always a joy getting to chat with you. Thanks for taking the time. I enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about you, and I look forward to seeing you at a convention. Hopefully soon.
I hope so. My best to all the fans out there and people that have tuned in, and I hope that I haven't been too boring, and maybe you learned a thing or two and had a little bit of fun watching this.
All righty. Well, thanks so much, Bill. If you can just close out of this browser, and we'll see you in about 5 or 10 minutes in the Zoom session.
Sounds great. Take care.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye,
Thanks a lot. Thanks so much to everyone who watched us live. We obviously didn't cover all of his career. He's been in so many things. We could have talked for 5 hours and still wouldn't have put a dent in it. But, the pandemic doesn't have to stop your convention fun. If you're watching this and you'd like a personal experience with Bill, you can head over to fullempirepromotions.com and book your one-on-one Zoom session. You'll have 5 minutes to chat with him personally, and we'll send you a recording of it as well. And you can also get personally signed autographs and video greetings on FullEmpirePromotions.com. Thanks again for everyone who joined us. Sorry if we didn't get to your question. We only had an hour to do it. But you guys sent some great questions in. And I hope you'll check out some of our upcoming digital events at the end of the month. We've got Phil Fondacaro, the star of Troll, and Willow on November 28th, and X-Files villain William B. Davis, the cigarette smoking man, on November 29th. If you have a Zoom session booked with Bill, you can go ahead and click on that link in the email that we sent you and your designated time slot, and we'll see you in there. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a good weekend.